broad campaign for awareness here, and you'll continually hear from us. So the notifications, I would say first and foremost, if you leave here with nothing else, make sure we have your updated contact information. We can text you, we can email you, we can call you, but if we don't have your preferred mode of communication, we can't reach you. So go to our website, pg&e.com, and make sure if there's a link later on in this presentation, and make sure we have your updated contact information. So when we can, so last year, weather obviously is dynamic. The time we did this last year, we got about 30 hours prior notice for the first notification. It was a north wind event that escalated, it was on a Saturday, to the point where this was needing to happen, and we got about 30 hours out with the notifications. But our goal is to 48 hours before the power is turned off to send our first notification. You are potentially in scope. Please get ready. 24 hours out, you would get another one, and then another notification just before electricity is turned off. A difference this year on our website is when this 48-hour period begins, you will be able to go to our website and enter your address as well to see if you will be in scope for this potential event. And then during the outage, you will continue to get notifications until you are restored. And of course, up here, city, county, agency, first responders, our first calls are to you. So Cal OES, CPC, Cal Fire, and our local OES teams and local dispatch will get the first notifications before the customer notifications come out. So the public safety power shutoff outage is a little different than your normal storm outage where it's raining, a tree falls in the line, we go fix it, and we turn you back on. There are a lot more steps to a public safety power shutoff that kind of increase the duration, potentially, of the outages. So the wind blows, we have a 12 to 24-hour wind event usually. Once the weather is clear, our teams have to patrol and inspect every inch of the line. The last thing we want is to turn the power off and then re-energize it when there's a wire on the ground and start a fire. That's the whole point of this program is to not start fires. So we have to make sure that the system is safe before we re-energize. So we have to patrol every inch of the line that has been de-energized. If we find damage, and in many cases we will, we'll need to repair it, obviously, and isolate the line in order to do so. And then once it is safe, a call is put into our operations control center, and the power is restored. And then you are notified when your power is back. In case you have left, you can come back. How we restore it is called step restoration. So basically the first step, if transmission is involved, is to restore those transmission lines. The good news with that is you can usually patrol those with helicopters. They're usually higher, they're still towers, you can see them easily. Getting the transmission up is the first job. Then you re-energize your substations. Your substation here in town, I think, is the south side of town. Once your substation is re-energized, then you can work from the substation out. So it won't be everybody's out for 48 hours. It'll be, in phases. The longest duration outages will occur if you're kind of at the end of your circuit, because we have to step out. So given the 12 to 24 hours for the weather event, our internal goal is to complete the re-energization in 24 to 48 hours. So we're asking everyone to prepare for a potential 72-hour or even more event outage. Last year, just for context, last year we got all our customers back in 30 hours after the weather had subsided. It was an overnight north wind event, and then 24 hours, and then early the next morning we got our last customers back. But the majority were back within 24 hours once we started patrolling. So, as I mentioned, we're doing that statewide campaign in coordination with CPC, Cal Fire, and Cal OES. We'll also be reaching out to you all. You'll get a letter, you'll get social media, you'll get calls. We're of course partnering with our local communities to help get the word out as well. Our medical baseline customers, these are folks that have a special electric rate because they have medical devices that rely on power. So if you're dependent on power, we know where you are if you're on this program. We're doing personal outreach to those folks ahead of time to make sure they have a plan and they're prepared. And then during an event, we are making personal phone calls, welfare checks to make sure you're okay. If we do not hear from you, we will be rolling personnel to the doorstep to knock, to get a confirmation that you're okay and you have a plan. And this is the website where you can learn more about this program as well as update your contact information, pg.com/wildfire. Please go. And that's enough talking for me. I just want to hear your questions and feedback and just really appreciate the time.
So do you have, as part of your outreach recommendations, we have our business community. I know Lake County's, I think it was, wasn't Singalina, but one of those.
Calistoga.
Thank you very much. There was a lot of spoilage in a lot of the businesses there, and so is there some advice you could give some of these businesses ahead of time so that they can prepare for this? Like, hopefully will just be a 30-hour event like you did before, but in the event it is a 72-hour event, I'm concerned because obviously it affects our food supply locally, and then the other one is I know most cell towers have battery backups, but during the fire event when we lost our cell tower south of town, it pretty much killed communication because most everybody now has cell as opposed to landlines. So
Yeah.
could you address those two concerns?
Sure, I'll take the latter one first. We have a team working directly with all the telecom companies, wireless and wired, to address this issue. The main theme for everything is be prepared and have a plan. I'd say the Calistoga issue last year was really, they weren't able to prepare and have a plan because they had an issue where their whole substation went out. They weren't properly notified and they weren't able to prepare.
Okay.
That was an error on our part. And one of the, we're a company that has spent 100 years trying to keep the lights on. And so last year was our first attempt to turning them off on purpose. And there were some hiccups that we've learned from and we're working through. So that's why this year we're telling everybody, be prepared for 48-hour outage potentially. You know, an earthquake could happen at any time. Being prepared is a good policy no matter what, whether PSPS or no. So we're hoping that this initiative will help increase preparedness statewide.
Obviously here we have the hospital, which I believe they have some sort of generator in place, but we have some local care homes. And I think our high school in the past has served as kind of an evac center, especially during the fires. So places like that, making sure that they have some sort of power. It's hard to send our residents in the event of an emergency somewhere when there's no power. You know? So those sort of concerns. So that's why we really wanted the word out. So.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we're looking at is how can we have hubs in communities where we can energize. And that's all under development.
And then I think we're talking about our local businesses. Do you have some sort of kit or some sort of handouts for them that they should be looking at, or just some?
All that collateral is in development right now with that
Okay.
statewide, as part of that statewide effort. But yes, businesses should certainly be prepared. These tend to happen, as we've noticed, October, November timeframe is when we get Santa Ana winds now apparently, and that's when they tend to happen. We're noticing. So I know that's a very impactful time of year in this part of the world, and you know, for tourism and agriculture and harvest and everything. So that's something that we need to prepare for.
Up here, questions?
Brian, could you turn back to the original Tier 2, Tier 3 map at the very beginning?
Statewide or local?
Local. That one. So, I have a question about the blank area there we see there, just for clarity. That's a typical, looks like a typical CAL FIRE map where they've taken the local response area and cut it out of the map. The darker colored yellow is what they would consider to be a moderate LRA fire safety zone. The areas that are blank where you're seeing the land, is that still going to be considered Tier 2, or has that not been evaluated? Because it's using the same distribution system that we would see in the other tier 2 portions.
So this is an important point to note. So this area, all of this area is not in tier 2 or 3, but is very likely served by lines running through tier 2 and tier 3, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, what we saw in, you mentioned Calistoga, going back to that example, that was downtown. There was no forest line up there. But Calistoga map looks exactly like this, except tier 1 kind of extends to the south. They're surrounded on all sides by tier 3 as well. So all the lines going into town had to be de-energized, and so all of these folks, even though they don't live in tier 2 or tier 3, were affected.
So areas, is that saying that areas that are considered to be local response area, once it gets out of CAL FIRE's jurisdiction, become tier 1?
No, there are local response areas
That
that are included in the map.
Okay, thank you.
That said, if your department wasn't consulted when they were making the map, I would urge you to contact your colleagues at CAL FIRE and see what you can do if you disagree with some of your area in here.
Is that a CAL FIRE map?
Yes.
Okay.
It was developed with CAL FIRE and the CPC.
I guess the reason why that triggers, just for information, the gold colored areas that you see up there, those are consistent, fairly consistent, what have been designated as moderate LRA fire safety zones. And everything outside of that that's not considered moderate fire safety zones is kind of not evaluated. And therefore, it appears that, and the valley floor is what we consider local response area. So it's almost like that piece of the puzzle's been pulled out of the mapping and just considered tier 1. And I was just curious, because it could easily be affected if any of those tier 2 areas are going to be shut down around that area. There won't be power in the valley.
Correct.
I'm just making sure that that's,
Correct.
You'll
But,
get
yeah.
collateral damage.
But I think the valley floor being tier 1 is pretty consistent with what you see statewide. So as we go, if you go down here, obviously all the central valley is tier 1. If you zoom in here, all of the little valleys in the North Bay are tier 1 as well. It's generally elevated terrain.
I just wanted our folks that live in the valley, that Willits is a town, that understand that if that tier 2 is shut down, most likely they're not gonna have
Yes.
power as well.
If we do a PSPS for all lines going through all of these areas, which is not a guarantee, we're trying to be as targeted as we can. Yes, there's no way to bring power into Willits through these areas.
Thank you.
I see our Brookfield fire chief is here. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay.
On your targeting of the high priorities for clearing potential threatening trees from the lines, I understand you'll probably be targeting the tier 3 and tier 2 first, but I see a tremendous number of lines in town and in the valley that have trees right in the, now maybe those are the lower lines and that they might be the high power lines.
I have a slide, I have a handout that we'll make sure to get to. It's called Know Your Overhead Lines, which none of us have ever had to think about this stuff before, but the high voltage lines are the ones we're addressing. So those are always at the top of the pole. So if you're like I am, and you drive around like this now, you'll see a yellow sign that says high voltage. Everything above that is what we're talking about. So everything below that is usually either very low voltage lines or telecommunications lines that aren't addressed by.
So if those branches knock those lower lines down, it doesn't start fires?
Well, it depends what, that's quite a blanket statement.
Okay.
But usually those are telecom lines. The ones halfway up the pole are usually phone. Those do have a small charge to them, you'd have to ask.
And I just want to say that this PowerPoint and any materials that you'd like to give me, we can post on our website, and so that people can access them and refer to this information.
And any contact information people should have, that would be important. So as we'd like to get it out to the press and to our community so they can better be prepared.
How long is it be out?
All right, hold on. So at this point, are you ready to take questions?
Sure.
Actually, can I just,
Go ahead.
one thing that we talked about, I wanted to really thank you and Allison for coming. The fire chief and I, Chris Willits, worked really hard to work with you and to bring you here. I'm so happy. This is a great presentation. Some of the things that we talked about were some common sense things that the ordinary resident can do to prepare for power outages of up to 72 hours. And some of these things are obvious, but some things may not be. And I just sort of wanted to go through that checklist, and if you could sort of help us with the checklist that residents can use. I know personally, things like keeping your car filled with gas, because your gas pumps are not going to be operable. I always carry power packs to plug my cell phone into that carry about 5 charges for a cell phone. It's always good to have those charged and ready, so you've got plenty of cell phone charge. Maybe you can continue that list for people.
Take your car out of the garage.
Know how to open your garage door without electricity.
Ice packs in the fridge. Battery powered candles. Lanterns.
Cash, first aid supplies, hard copies of phone lists that are important to you. Sorry.
We have collateral. I suspect as part of the statewide campaign, this will be a big part of it, is being prepared personally for an outage. Medications in a cooler. Oxygen providers in town. A lesson learned, particularly in Lake County, that the oxygen providers down there did a great job of proactively doing, was when this was coming, they restocked all their customers with extra tanks. So that's a big one. That was, didn't even think of that, and they did that on their own. That was really good, best practice.
You ready to take questions from the public?
Absolutely.
All right. Back there first.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned about possible helping out like hospitals and say Safeway with generator type equipment if something happened. I was curious if you reach out to like the schools, because in our case we are a congregation area for people, but our food stores within our 4 schools rival Safeway at any given time. We do feed several hundred people several times a day. If there's anything that you included that maybe in your reach out to like the generator issue. We couldn't possibly afford a generator big enough to power some of the stuff we got.
Yeah, this is a real pain point. There's no way to do it. And so individual generator to sending an individual generator to anywhere is nearly impossible to do. So what I had mentioned is we're working on this pilot program of these planned interconnection hubs. I don't remember what slide it's on. Where we're piloting a couple this year, and we hope to expand it, where you can get a little section of a downtown usually, or one of the pilots we're doing is in a small community, wooded community that has a gas station, a college, a fire station, and a market as part of the circuit that we know we can keep energized by rolling a generator to it. But there's some work, construction that needs to go into establishing it. So I don't have a good answer for you now.
That's fine,
But, yeah,
it's just a question.
Yeah.
So for the public, we shouldn't expect that here in Willits this season, is that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. For sure.
Another question, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take yours since you, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious, two comments. One is the Native American people up in Lakeville told me that they knew not to camp by the rivers in the winter because the wind was so swift. And the roads now have taken the place of a lot of the open paths. And I'm concerned when I go over to the coast, which I do often, where the wires have been cut and you just have the plain poles with clearage of 50 feet on either side. The telephone poles are just left open for the wind to fly through. And I don't know if there's any way to secure those poles stable to where they won't blow over or snap. The older the poles get, the more, they're not like, I liked hearing what you said about the steel, or concrete or doing something. And is it solar panels or solar, is that an option that would, will that electrical off the grid power still be available? On the radio, I also wanted to talk about KZYX, many of us rely upon the radio for notification of where the fires are, where the, weather conditions. And if the radio is off, if you don't have electricity, and you don't have, part of the program for helping would be to have battery operated radios, or to have solar, the wind up kind. That would be a good safety measure that you didn't mention. And water.
That's
Water.
it. Water.
How much water do we need? Morgan, who's on the planning department, told me they do have safety generators backup generators for the water in town that take it. That's a really, but water is critical, you have animals, you know, for any, you know, any strong period of time filling up your bathtub.
Right, Randy, I'm gonna answer.
Anyway, I'd like to know about the wind.
I wrote them down. Those were all good call-outs. So the system hardening is what I mentioned, going through the system in high fire threat areas and prescribing a way to harden them. All the wood poles that are out there now are designed to withstand up to 50 miles an hour or so. But there are areas, and you said the wind tunnels, that's another reason why you need more weather stations, right? The network as it is now, you don't have visibility into those little canyons where the wind screams down. So we're trying to get a weather station in all of those areas so that we can see exactly what's happening. And then you have solar. So solar, if you just have panels on your roof with no battery storage, you're connected to the grid just as you would be taking grid power. So you would be affected by the outage as well. If you had a battery, so there are now battery storage being rolled out by a lot of solar companies, you would be able to isolate yourself from the grid if you had solar plus a battery. And that's something that, if you have the means and the inclination, that would be a good way to make yourself more resilient.
Got a question back there?
I have a two-part question. Number one, is the only substation on Center Valley Road here in the Willits area? Or are you aware of more than that? And does that energize the whole city and the valley? And once you answer that, I'll ask the second part.
I can't say I know our system well enough to answer that definitively.
And I don't either, and I'm sorry.
Okay, the second part is, if that is the substation that powers the whole city and the valley, can a generation unit be put there so that the areas that are out of tier 2 and 3 be energized? And the reason is, I live in the valley, and I pump my own water, and I also have medical supplies and I wasn't aware of the number or the group in PG&E that deals with people that has medical supplies that runs on electricity. So it's important to me, if we could really help this town be isolated with our own power, if you can make sure your main lines are clear, or that you can provide power at the substation generation for this town and the valley. Because we have no water in the valley, we don't have city water.
Understood.
And we got animals out there too, it's farmland, it's ag land.
I don't know the answer to your question. But I would say, if you're not on the medical baseline rate, please sign up for that.
Maybe I could reach out to the city manager with an answer to your question, or
Sure.
if you could give me any, I could reach out to you.
Sure.
Is it, can I just clarify, is it technically possible to do that? If, you know, if we collectively could afford a generator big enough to do it, is it technically possible to run just that substation?
Technically, you can generate a substation.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Can you generate 50 substations? No, probably not right now. Which in a scenario where you would be out, that would be what we're looking at. So we're always looking at, as this continues and rolls out, we're gonna be better at this year than we were next year. Last year, and we're gonna be better next year, hopefully, as will the community. This is gonna be a work in progress.
I know this is a rural area, and there are a lot of people I know that have generators or contemplating getting generators. Any cautions that they should have for your people?
You are law enforcement. Yes, please have an electrician install your generator, a licensed electrician, make sure it's installed properly. We do not want, and that is a hazard of this program potentially, is improperly installed generators backfeeding onto the system. And possibly starting an ignition that way, but also endangering our crews.
Would those be tips maybe that you could provide, maybe not just us, but the world? Because I know that there are ways, like if I have a generator and just plug my refrigerator in it and not actually plug it into my house, probably not gonna affect you guys, versus if I jury rig it into my lines at home, it might energize your pole and kill your guy while he's outside thinking he's in a de-energized line, so.
Correct, thank you. We'll look at what we have on generators. That should be
So you said 72 hours is what you expect to be the maximum amount of time. But if the weather conditions persist for a few days, could it feasibly then be like almost a week of being out?
Anything is possible there, yes. We have to wait until the weather has subsided, obviously, before we start restoration. So, as I said, our internal goal is 24 to 48 hours once we begin the restoration. So you've got your weather conditions in front of that, and then if we've got significant damage that takes a long time to repair, you can stretch it on the back end. But that's our goal.
And then representative from Sonoma Clean Power said that that Energy Forum recently, the PG&E customers should expect their rates to go up significantly because of distribution costs because of all the new safety measures. Is that accurate as far as you know?
Well, we have several things, proceedings at the CPUC right now on what this work is, getting it approved, and how to pay for it. And that all runs through our regulator on how rates are set.
Brian, will you leave your contact info with the city manager later on, so if I have questions personally, I can get a hold of you guys?
Of course.
Thank you. Oh, I got a gentleman back.
Is there a copy of the presentation we can get?
Absolutely.
I will post it on the website, on our website.
So, well, I was just thinking, I know that you've got information coming out, we know how important education and preparedness is, and a lot of families, or even seniors, get their information from a source. For the families, it's generally the schools, maybe for seniors, it's from the senior center. And when you're preparing for an earthquake, there's usually a checklist. It's pretty simple for people to go through and say, hey, do I have all these things? Can we expect that we're gonna see something in the mail from PG&E before fire season gets here, or is this something that's gonna take much longer to roll out?
I think that'll be part of this statewide campaign. We have a lot of materials available now. on the website.
Before this coming fall fires?
Yes,
Summer, fall?
yes.
Okay.
There will be a mass,
Okay.
at least, well, there will be mailing, there will be ads. Yeah.
And when all of these people go and give their correct contact information on the website, they'll see a lot of this information up there too, a lot more resources.
Are people who are PG&E paying customers already on this, or does everybody have to opt in some?
We have some contact information for everybody. Not most of it, a lot of it is not how people would like to be informed. So we have a lot of landlines, for instance. Sometimes we just have name and address. So we don't have a lot of cell phones. We were able to sign up about 100,000 people last year to update their information just with our campaign in the tier 3, which was pretty good. But now it's going out to everybody, so we're hoping a big push for that. You can definitely help us there.
Can you guarantee privacy for people in this community who may be wary of giving personal information like cell phone numbers?
Yes, there are very strict privacy laws for customer information. And in fact, thanks for mentioning it, that has been a challenge in coordinating with local governments, is sharing of vulnerable populations and where a lot of our first responders want to know where they are. And that's been an ongoing challenge because of the strict privacy laws. So in a way that's good, in a way it creates challenges, but it's very strict.
Last call for anybody from the public that wants to ask Brian questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for